Hello, I'm Rick Stivers. I'd like to welcome you back to YoungMartin'sReels. Today's project is going to be this Shimano Speros 5000 FA. And let's talk about this reel a little bit. I got this reel in this condition right here. It looked like it was a perfectly functional reel, only missing the spool. Okay, and the anti-reverse on it functions well. All that seems to work. It seems to be fairly well balanced. And it's fairly quiet. It's a little bit dirty, but aside from that, it seems to be in really good shape. So I felt that it just needed a spool. Well, when I went out looking for a spool for this Spheros 5000 FA, I was totally unsuccessful. Nowhere I looked could I find one. I checked eBay. I checked the entire internet. Everywhere I looked, no go. But I did... Just when I was ready to give up on it, I did find this Shimano 5000 FA reel that's supposed to fit. I think it was a, I can't remember the name of it, but it was another reel. And I thought, well, maybe I'll take a chance on that and see if that's going to fit. And it turns out that it did fit. So that part lucked out. It's a nice fit. It's not the correct reel as far as the badging goes. The Spheros reel actually says Spheros 5000 FA on the side of it, and this one doesn't say that. It just says 5000 Shimano, but it does fit it. It's a nice reel. But then once I did that, I encountered another problem. That was after investing in a spool. So once that was done, I noticed that this bail was loose. And I got to looking at it. I went to tighten it down and realized, hey, this bail is missing something. It's missing the roller assembly. So this kind of broke my heart a little bit. I went out looking for the bail roller and was unable to find that. But then I decided, well, what happens if we tighten this down? Well, it's tight all the way right there on the screw. It's as far as the screw will tighten. But if you take the screw out and you remove this, what you will notice is that the shaft is snapped off. And if you blow this up, that end of that shaft is snapped off. So that's everything that the roller bearing would sit on is broken off. So I said, well, I'm going to have to go out and try to find one. I was very unsuccessful at that. But I decided to go down and start rummaging through my drawer of spare parts. And I encountered this rotor assembly. Now, I don't know what reel this rotor assembly came off of. I really don't. But what I did notice is that this part of it right here is made the same way as this one was. So what we're going to try to do is take this apart. Oh, by the way, also this one is broken because the bail comes out. Since the bail easily comes out of that one, my goal is to drill this one out, take this one off, and seal this bell wire up into this roller assembly. But before we go to that extent, let's see if this roller assembly is going to fit over there. It looks the same, but is it? Okay, here's that part. See, and it's got all of the part that we need. So set that back on. Let's bring this piece over. And is there, all right, let's try tightening this one down on here. Thread's the same. screwed down and the roller still turns, I think we're going to be successful. All I've got to do is get this piece removed off of here and then seal it into this one. And if I have to, I can JB weld it, which is probably going to be my preferred method anyway. So I'm going to have to drill this out on this side. And but this piece does work. It replaces everything that was missing off of that one. And I think I might need to try tightening that down just a little bit more. Okay. And yeah, I think that's going to work just fine. So we're going to get to that. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and take this apart. And we're going to go ahead and service this entire reel. And this won't be completed until tomorrow. But let's see how we do. Let's start off. Let's take off the spool. Okay. And what is it going to take to remove this bail assembly? Now there's a part on here that I'm not really sure why it's there, and that's this piece here, and that fits in behind there. So I don't really see what that does for anything. This piece goes like that, and that one's going to go through. Okay, let's go ahead and put our screw back in this just to keep it together. All right. And we'll be drilling that out in just a little bit. All right, got that. Let's see what it's going to take to remove the handle. It may just be a reverse thread. Yep. So we can put that back on. That's not really doing us any good having it off. All right, we're going to come back to that in a minute. Let's go ahead and get this off. All right, that's got the handle off. Now, normally, Ken would be selling this reel, but because it's going to be kind of a bastardized reel, I don't believe he'll be putting this one up for sale. So, I think this one's going to be going into his arsenal of fishing reels. Although I wouldn't mind having it. There we go. That was rubbing really bad or vibrating when you turned it. So we added a little oil there. Let's put a little bit of oil on each side of the pivot here. Okay. And we'll put a little oil on the threads and set that over to the side. All right, this is going to require, it appears, I don't think that separates there. It's hard to see for sure. But it doesn't appear that it does. So I think I've got to take this off. But let's find out. Let's see if we can get the clicker cog and the spacer off. All right, there's the spacer. There's the clicker cog. And let's take out these two screws. This should be the lockdown for the rotor nut. All right. Take that off. Put those two little tiny screws over there. And I believe we are ready to take this nut off. go. It comes off in a counterclockwise direction. Okay. Now, see this little plastic piece here? You don't want to lose that. Okay, that fits down inside here, and it keeps this, it provides a bushing for this axle assembly, and it keeps it from grinding and rubbing on the side. Okay, so take that off. And we're going to take this rotor off. Okay. This is the piece that we're going to be wanting to drill and grind on a little bit. And it looks pretty good, actually. And there we go. I'll clean this up a little bit. All right. Now let's take a look at the rest of this. And yes, this does not look like it's comes up. Okay, so we're going to have to take these 4 screws out right here to take this anti-reverse off. So let's do that first. Don't take off the 2 black ones. Okay, we have a bushing, okay, that fits down inside. That's going to operate our anti-reverse. Okay, that's the anti-reverse piece. And we've got these 4 screws. Now, if you take this the rest of the way apart, see these 2 screws here, that would take the rest of this off. I'm going to tell you not to do that. And this is one of those times that I'm actually going to follow my own advice. I'm not going to tell you that. I've had enough difficulty with this reel to begin with. Okay, so now out comes the pinion gear and the bearing. Now that bearing is a shielded bearing, but it's not a sealed bearing. So there's plenty of room there for us to give it a drink of oil, and that will slowly seep down into the bearings. Okay. Now we should be ready to take this. I believe that there is an O-ring here, right here. It's going to hold all this together after I take the screws out. So let's go ahead and see about getting that pulled loose first. I don't want to break it. There we go. Just need to get it out and around these posts right here. There we go. So that when we take these screws out, we'll be able to separate that. All right, there is a bump guard on this case here, but normally you'll have to take that bump guard off. And in this case, I believe that's going to stay, as we've got 4 screws all by their lonesome sitting here. They're going to have to come out. So let's see about taking these 4 side screws out. Okay, we got a long one here and a long one here. All right. So we know where the long ones go. The short ones go there. Now I've got to take a brief time out here and figure out where this. Oh, I know where this screw goes. This is the one I took out from here. Let's go ahead and put that in there so that I don't get confused by that again. That's going to be a leftover part in the end, but I don't want to get confused about it later as to where it goes, which I was. We're going to flip this lever over like so, and watch this. Oh, look at that. Let's get you in. Is that as far as you can go? Okay, there is a tiny, tiny little collar right there that fits on that. That's going to be an easy piece to lose. So let's take that and set it over here to the side where it can't get lost. As a matter of fact, that one is so small that I'm going to do this. Okay, we're going to slide that on a safety pin and close it up. I don't do that very often, but when I've got a really small spring or a really small part that I've got to hang on to, I do that to keep it from getting lost. All right, now let's see about taking this side plate off. Have any other screws anywhere? I don't see any. Well, that's interesting. All of the screws are on this side, but it's not this side that comes off. It's this side. Let's get this O-ring out of the way. Like so. All right, now. Yes, it appears it is the side without the screws that actually comes off. At least that's what it appears. Well, no, it is this side that comes off, but it's the whole side that comes off, like that. Okay, and it is a separate piece. So, okay. But to finish this up, you've got to take this piece out. All right. And at this point, ready to clean a little grease off of here so that we can see our crosswind block and what holds it all together. Now we're going to remove this. Well, that screw was already loose to begin with. Okay. All right, remove the screw. With the screw removed, we should be able to remove the axle shaft. There's a lot of old caked up grease on there. There we go. Now we should be able to remove the main gear and don't lose the shim washer over here. It's running really dry, but it's in really good shape. All right. Next, we're going to take out the crosswind block, which again, it's also very dry. And we're going to take out the crosswind gear. That's a heavy gear. All right. And it does have a bushing in there, but we're going to leave that alone. And it's got a lot of old grease that we're going to scrape and get out of there. Anything on this other side? Okay, there's our bearing on this side. Let's see how it's turning. Okay, it turns beautifully. So we're going to go ahead and oil that like we did the main bearing in the front. Okay, we got a bushing on the other side. All right, I'm going to go and scrub all these parts down. When I come back, we should be ready to start reassembling. All the parts are cleaned up now, so it's time to start assembling. And first thing we're going to look at is right here. See this white plastic bushing in here? Well, I didn't tell you that coming out. and it goes right inside here. It's got a long flat part. Let's go ahead and pop it out of there so you can see it. There you go. That's what it looks like. And it's going to go in with this long flat side facing down towards the bottom, like so. And just line it up, get it set in there. There you have it. All right. Now I believe that the next piece that we're going to want to put in is going to be this pinion gear. Let's go ahead and lubricate that. And I'm using Penn Precision Reel Grease on that. Okay, I'll set that back down inside, like so. Get the bearing to slide in there. Okay, and that's good. Now, if you'll look here on this side case, when I took this out, we had this bushing in there. All right, this bushing is what came out of that side over there, and notice it's got two little points on it right here. Well, those points have got to go into slots that are in the side of the case. And I don't know if you can see them, how well you can see them. There's one there, and there's one there. So they're going to be top and bottom. All right, we're going to put those in there. Now, here's an interesting thing. If you decided you wanted to hot rod this case, you could take or get a replacement bearing and put a bearing in there in place of that, like so. All right. Now, I'm not going to do that because I don't have a replacement bearing. But if you wanted to order one, you could go on to eBay or out on the internet somewhere and look for a sealed bearing that is, well, it doesn't have to be sealed, but I would recommend doing it as a sealed bearing. But you want a 9 by 15 by 5 millimeter bearing. That's what you'd want to put. And all three of the bearings in here are the same. So let's say you had this reel and it had bad bearings. You could order 3 9 by 17 by 5, 9 by 17 by 5 bearings and put them in this reel, and that would take care of your bearing problem. So even though parts aren't available for this reel, what you do is you go looking for the specific size bearings that you need, and you replace them. Now this is where things get a little bit complicated because you got to try to line up those dots. Let's see if there's any kind of mark on the top that shows you where they are. Yeah. All right, if you look, see those little arrows? Those little arrows are pointing to where those are. So since you know where they go in here, you can line those arrows up inside the case, like so. And then get that bearing to drop down in there where it belongs, like so. All right. Next thing we're going to want to put in is going to be our oscillating gear. And we're going to want to put some grease on the center hub here for the oscillating gear. Grease that up. And we're going to put some on the gear itself. And we're going to come back and grease the teeth. Now, you don't have to get them all. As a matter of fact, if you do get them all, you'll probably end up with excess grease in here. But a little excess grease, I'm not one of these people that says, oh, you can't have excess grease in there. I don't want you to have tons of grease, because what I find, people claim that, you know, it collects grease and dirt and stuff. Well, guess what? If there's dirt in there, it needs to be trapped somewhere. It doesn't just need to be floating around in the reel. My issue, though, is when you go to come back and clean it up, it just takes so much longer if you put way too much grease in it. All right, so there's the oscillating gear set in place, and now we're going to install our crosswind block. And the only part on this is going to need some is the channel underneath, like so. And then set that down in there on top. Let's see here. Well, let's adjust things a little bit so we can put it in forward of that and then move it back. There. There. Then we slide it all the way to the back, like so. That took care of that. The next thing that's going to go in is going to be our main gear. And remember, we got this these shims over here. This one's actually got a bushing and three shim washers. So whatever number stack you have, make sure to keep it that way. We're going to put a little grease on there to help keep them from falling off. Here, flip this over, and let's grease our oscillating gear, or the gear for oscillations. It's still part of the main gear, but that's the part that intersects with that oscillating gear over there. With that greased, we're going to set it down in here, and it should mesh with this gear and this gear. Like so. All right. The next part we're going to slide in is going to be this main, axle shaft. And we're going to oil axle shafts. I do not grease them. And I've got a reel out on the boat right now that I greased back when I was getting started on this. And it's a very slow reel. I'm going to try to bring it in the next couple of weeks and go over it and see if we can make it a faster reel. Okay, we're going to slide that in, slide it into the crosswound block until you line up the hole for the screw. So far, things are looking really good. Okay, the next thing we're going to try to do is set this plate back in there, and to be perfectly honest, there we go. I think it goes this way. Okay, like so. There we go. And that's going to hold, it's not going to hold itself in there very well. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of grease right here to the top of it, because I believe that'll help kind of hold it in place until the other parts are in. All right, so let's set this back in there like that. Yeah, see, it's going to hold itself in there with the grease. Next part we need to install is going to be the bearing that goes in this other side. It goes right here. This is one I slipped into the other side a while ago just to show you how it would work. And we're going to oil it again. At that point, I think we are ready to flip it over and drop it back into place. Now you've got to line up that bearing, the bushing, and get all the side pieces lined up, and it should snap into place. Nice and snug, and it did. All right, now remember, my two long screws go up here, and the two short screws go down here. So let's start off with the short, setting them into the holes, and set the long ones in. Next part we're going to need to put on is going to be this O-ring, and he's going to create a little bit of grief, I'm afraid, as we go to try to slip him in back behind here. Okay, I got it to snap in. I was afraid it broke for a second there. Okay, let's slide it over. Flip it over the next part. And little by little, we'll start working this O-ring into place. There we go. Okay, that should be a decent water seal. All right, now, remember this little guy. Well, it's time to put him back on. And what we're going to do, I'm going to hang on to it with one hand over here, and I'm going to put a little dab of grease right here where he goes. Right there, like so. And then I'm going to set that little collar back on there like that. Okay? So that now, when we go to set our anti-reverse block back in, that little collar is going to sit into this notch right here. Okay, so set this in, bring it down, kind of line it in place. Let's see. Okay, see these two pins right here? This one and this one? Now you've got to go into these two holes right here. Okay, so we're going to line, everything's got to be lined up at once. All right. That one's in that hole, that one's in that hole, and that collar is in that slot. So now we're ready to put our screws back in. Now I've heard that if you over torque these, they can cause your anti-reverse to bind up. So let's snug them, but don't crank them down. All right, now anti-reverse is disabled. Let's bring this out a little bit. Anti-reverse is disabled. When we go this way, still disabled. Now, why do you think that is? It's missing a part. This part right here. Okay. When we put this in, see the two flats in there? Those two flats that it has have got to line up with the two flats on the pinion gear. So slip this down in. The large side goes up. Slide it down in. There we go. Now, it'll go that way, but it won't come backwards. Flip the lever. Now it will turn in both directions. So we've now successfully reinstalled our anti-reverse. And we're going to stop at this point until I get this bail repaired. And once the bail is repaired, I'll be back to you, and that'll be tomorrow. And we'll see about getting that reinstalled back in there. Now I've got to get this piece off of this one, and I don't have to worry about whether or not I damage this one. I don't have to worry about that. This is the one that's already damaged. The one that I was going to have to worry about was already off. So that's easy. So what we got to do is get this one off. And I might just grab hold of a pair of vice grips and just see if I can't pry it off of there. But that's going to be, I'll tell you about it. Well, tell you what. Let's see. All right, and it will not just pull off. So I'm going to have to drill this. And I'll be getting back to you. All right, I drilled out the pin and pulled it off. And there's the old one. It's the bad one. It was snapped off. Okay. And I have now installed the new one. I cut a groove in the bail wire so that the JB weld would lock it in inside, because I don't have the little aluminum pins that they would drive into these to keep them. And besides, it didn't seem to hold the other one anyway. So the JB weld, I think, is going to work better. But I got to give it a 24-hour cure time. And so that's it for today. I will be back tomorrow and finish this up. It's been right about 24 hours since I've worked on this last. And this is the bail wire that's been repaired, and you can see the JB weld. I went ahead and drilled this hole out larger so that the JB weld could really get down inside there. I filled the hole full of JB weld. I cleaned the bail wire and then cut a groove in it so that it could give the JB weld something hard to grab hold of. And then I filled it in, inserted the wire with lots of extra JB weld in there, and then sat there slowly with Q-tips and wiped off the excess JB weld until it was nice and clean and everything looked fine. Okay, and with that done, this part of this is done. So, but one thing, if you look very carefully right here, you will see that the roller is sliding in and out just slightly. And the reason for that is, I believe, okay, I can see we still have we're a little bit off here on our tension, and we'll adjust that in a few minutes. But If you look very carefully at the end of this, you will see that it's got the notched place here. Okay, this was designed for a bail. Let's take this off so I don't lose the pieces. This is designed for one that has a notched out place in this bail arm, and this one doesn't actually have the notch. But I went ahead and screwed it down in there a little bit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Dremel tool and I'm going to cut just slightly a notch in there for that to fit into. You can see where that's pressed in a little bit, and right where that's at, I'm going to use my Dremel tool and I'm going to notch it out just slightly for that end piece right there to fit down inside. This is the bit that I put in here for notching this out, and I don't need to take a lot of material out, just a little bit. So I think I'm going to keep the RPMs fairly low and see what I can do there. All right, I think that little bit of notching right there is going to be all that it takes to get this to fit and slide down in there like it should. All right. All right, there's ever so slightly a little bit of motion there, and I think that's will be okay, especially if I crank it down just a little bit more. There we go. Okay, and now let's see if I can adjust this. If you look, when I took it apart, it seemed to be just a little bit sprung, or it was still sticking out just a little bit. Okay, so what we're going to do is see if we can adjust this in a little bit. Yeah, see how that wants to spring out a little bit when I take it off? What we want is for that to fit almost exactly on there. And if you look, see how it's played out just a little bit? What we want is when it's in, we need that to be straight. And if you look, it's not straight. So what I'm going to do is adjust that wire just a little bit. Okay, let's see where that takes us to. That's much closer than where it was. Let's take it just a little bit more. All right, now it's an almost exact fit. There we go. That's what we're looking for. That's how you get a nice strong connection when you hook up your spring, so that your spring, what happens is if you've got too much outward tension, it creates tension here and creates friction. And wherever you've got friction, you're not likely to be able to get things to turn. All right, now we have never had this one apart. So let's go ahead and take this side apart and make sure that we've got it adequately cleaned inside. It feels almost as though the screw is bent the way that it's turning. All right, there we go. Okay, now this is going to be spring loaded, so you got to be careful when you lift it out. There we go, heard it pop loose. Okay, this is the spring. It just popped out of there. When we put this back, that spring right there has got to go into that hole. This arm right here, or shoulder, has got to go into this hole right here. Oh, and you got to be very careful because you've got that little piece. I'll tell you what, we'll move him over to the side, and that, if you look, that's one that can't, neither of those two, well, the spring could go onto a paper clip, but not the pin. So we're going to keep the two of them together over here to the side. And let's go ahead and take this side piece apart so that we can lubricate it, clean it out. You can see there's dirt inside here. So we're going to clean this out. Okay, it's got a top screw and a bottom screw. So we're going to have to be careful as we take this apart that we don't lose anything. All right, the bottom screw is the shorter of the two. If you look right here, you'll see there's a short one and a long one. The short one goes in the bottom, the long one goes in the top. Okay, this, gently lift this off, and let's have a look at what we have inside here. Okay, we've got a spring-loaded piece here, and we've got this assembly here, which is where our spring is on this side. This should lift out. Now, it looks like it wants to. Okay, gently lift this piece out. Okay, there's that clip. And now this piece is going to lift out and make sure it could be spring loaded. It's not. Okay. All right, we've got all that apart. We're going to scrub this real quick. We're not going to take this part out. It looks like it would just slip off the end, but it is spring loaded here, so we're going to leave that in place and just clean this up a little bit. All right, now we're ready to put this back together, and we're going to start off . All right, let's try this again. I'm going to put the pin in, the spring, like so. We've got the spring arm installed in the hole. We're going to sit this down over top. Try not to let it slip out of your fingers. Set it down, push it all the way down so that it fits flush. All right. Now we're going to install the screw. All right, now we've got that screwed all the way down to where it fits flush. All right, I'm going to come back to this side now, and this has got a large boss and a short boss. We're going to put the large one on the bottom, slide it in until it drops into that hole, like that. With that done, we're now able to bring this piece up, drop it in. You might have to wiggle a little bit. Now what's going to happen is this short shoulder boss on this side should line up and drop into the hole. There we go. Okay, with that in, you can now put the side cover back on. And we're going to put the longer of the two screws. That's this one. It's going to go in right here. Just in case you drop this off, make sure it stays on. I wondered where that came from. I looked at it, I was like, where does that go? Yeah, that little plastic washer our bushing goes right there. All right, let's put the cover back on. Long screw goes at the top. Short screw goes at the bottom. All right, now that trips nicely. Now we'll bring this piece back up. At this point, everything should be lined up. We've kept this out separate so that we can put it in. Okay, the thin ring, it's got a slope and then you've got a thin ring. Well, the thin ring goes to the back. Okay, set this in place, line it up. I'll add a little oil. Make sure it's going to stay turning freely. Spin it around a couple times. All right, now we got a little bit of scrubbing left to do on this, and we should be ready to put it on. All right, our modified bail is now ready to be reinstalled. We're going to drop this back on here. And remember that the flat sides of this, if you look, see the flat sides, they've got to align on this pinion gear. So let's line those up, drop it down. Should fit right on like that. And we'll go ahead and do this first. We're going to go ahead and tighten down the nut. Here we go. Now, hopefully. And now remember this plastic bushing we talked about. That slides down, drops right into there like that. Okay. Then we've got this cap that's going to go on. And we've got to get it to line up to the holes. And that appears to be it. Let's find out if I'm right. There we go. Okay. Next to go on is going to be our clicker cog. Slide all the way down, and then we have two tension or spacer washers. These are used to adjust the level of the spool so the line will wrap onto it smoothly and evenly. All right, let's got that on. I'm ready to now do this spool. I believe this is as a matter of fact, I know this is a brand new spool, but we're going to take it apart anyway because I want to see what's in there and to lubricate it. So let's see what we got on a brand new spool. Okay, this is a brand new spool. They have oiled the felts. There's not a lot of oil, but there is oil on there. I don't know how old this spool is, but it is new. So we're going to go ahead and put a little oil in there. Put the first keyed washer. That's the one with the flat. Okay. Put that in there. Then comes the next washer. We'll oil that one. Next comes the eared washer. That's the one with the two little ears on it. They've got to go into these slots on each side, like so. Now we got another felt drag washer that goes in. All right, and our last keyed washer, got that keyway. Set that in like so. Put our clip back in, retaining clip, and that will keep them in anytime that it's not installed. All right, with that installed, we're now going to drop the spool back on. There we go. And install the drag knob. I'm going to reinstall the handle. Zoom this back out. And we're going to hold this while we tighten it, nice and snug. And there we go. We have the Shimano Speros 5000 FA Frankenstein reel. All right, it is not put together with all original factory parts. It has this part, which is off of another reel. Couldn't even begin to tell you what reel that came off of. The roller assembly came off a different reel. The spool is off of a different reel, but it all fits very nicely together, and everything works great on this thing. And I would not hesitate whatsoever to buy this reel. However, I know that Ken likes to have things 100% exactly the way they're supposed to be when he sells them on eBay, because he wants to keep his 100% customer satisfaction rating. So I understand if he decides he doesn't want to put this one out there for sale and decides that he'd rather keep it for himself. It is a very nice reel. There you go. There is the completion of a Franken reel. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, hit the like button. Or if you like what you saw here, hit the like button. If you didn't like what you saw here, hit the dislike button. Tell me what you didn't like. You don't have to hit the dislike just to tell me what you didn't like, but if you do hit it, I would appreciate it if you told me. If you'd like to see further videos like this and you're not subscribed, please subscribe. And for now, that's Rick Stivers of the Young Martin's Reels, signing out.